The match fell from Johnny Cash's hand. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then a small flame caught the dry grass. Within minutes, 500 acres of California wilderness were burning. When the judge asked if he felt bad about killing 49 endangered birds, Johnny said 5 words that would haunt him forever. "I don't care about your damn buzzards." It was June 1965. Johnny Cash was at the peak of his addiction and the bottom of his humanity. What happened in Los Padres National Forest that day would become one of his greatest shames, and his most important lesson. But to understand how Johnny Cash could stand in front of a judge and say he didn't care about destroying 500 acres of forest, you need to know where his head was in 1965. Johnny was drowning. Pills controlled every moment of his life. Amphetamines to wake up, barbiturates to sleep, more amphetamines to function. The cycle was killing him, but he couldn't stop. His first wife Vivian had left him, taking their 4 daughters. His career was collapsing. Radio stations were dropping his songs. Concert promoters were canceling shows because Johnny was too unreliable, too wrecked to perform. And Johnny didn't care about anything. The pills had created a wall between him and reality, between him and consequences, between him and basic human decency. June Carter was trying to save him. She'd been touring with Johnny for years, watching him destroy himself. She loved him, though she'd never said it out loud, and she was terrified she was going to watch him die. "Johnny, you need help," June said for the 100th time. "Real help. Not more pills, not more excuses, help." "I'm fine," Johnny slurred, the same lie he'd told everyone for years. "You're not fine. You're killing yourself." Johnny laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Maybe that's the point." June walked away. She'd heard that answer too many times. In June 1965, Johnny decided to go camping in Los Padres National Forest in California. He needed to get away, clear his head. Or at least that's what he told people. Really, he wanted to get high in the wilderness where nobody could judge him, where he could take as many pills as he wanted without June's worried looks or his manager's lectures. Johnny drove his camper truck deep into the forest, found a remote spot near the Sespe Creek, set up camp, and proceeded to take enough amphetamines to stay awake for 2 straight days. The truck had mechanical problems. The wheel bearing was damaged, creating friction. Johnny knew it. He'd been meaning to fix it. But pills made him careless about details like vehicle maintenance. On the 2nd day, June 10th, 1965, the damaged wheel bearing overheated, sparked, caught fire. Johnny was inside the camper when he smelled smoke. He stumbled outside, high and disoriented, and saw flames coming from under the truck. A normal person would have tried to put it out immediately, would have understood the danger of fire in a dry California forest in the middle of summer. But Johnny wasn't normal. He was high, confused, moving in slow motion. "I should probably do something about that," he mumbled to himself. He didn't. The fire spread from the truck to the grass. The grass was bone dry. California was in a drought. The forest was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. And Johnny Cash had just provided it. Within minutes, the small fire had become something bigger. The dry grass ignited, then the brush, then the trees. Johnny stood there, watching it spread, still not quite understanding what was happening. The pills had slowed his reactions, dulled his sense of danger. By the time his brain caught up to reality, the fire was out of control. Johnny tried to stop it, stomped on flames, threw dirt. But it was like trying to stop an avalanche with your hands. The fire had its own momentum now, its own terrible purpose. He ran back to what was left of his truck, grabbed his gear, and fled. Left the fire burning behind him, spreading through Los Padres National Forest like a hungry, living thing. 508 acres burned that day. Ancient trees that had stood for hundreds of years turned to ash in hours. Wildlife fled in terror, and 49 California condors died in the flames. California condors were critically endangered. There were only a few dozen left in the entire world. They nested in the cliffs near where Johnny had camped. And when the fire swept through, it killed 49 of them. Nearly half of the remaining California condors on Earth. Gone. Because Johnny Cash was too high to maintain his truck, too careless to prevent a fire, too slow to stop it. The U.S. Forest Service arrived with helicopters and crews. They fought the fire for 3 days before finally containing it. The damage was catastrophic. 500 acres of wilderness destroyed. Endangered species killed. Millions of dollars in damage. And they wanted to know who started it. Johnny was arrested. Questioned. The evidence was clear: his damaged truck, his campsite, witnesses who'd seen him in the area. "Did you start this fire?" the investigator asked. Johnny, still high, shrugged. "My truck caught fire. I couldn't stop it." "You couldn't stop it, or you didn't try?" Johnny didn't answer. The federal government sued Johnny Cash for the damage. The case went to court. The U.S. Forest Service wanted someone held accountable for the destruction. Johnny showed up to court high, arrogant, completely disconnected from the gravity of what he'd done. The prosecution laid out the facts. 500 acres burned, 49 endangered condors dead, millions in damage, irreplaceable ecosystem destroyed. "Mr. Cash," the judge said, "do you understand the severity of what happened? Do you feel any remorse for the animals that died? For the forest that burned?" Johnny looked at the judge. And in that moment, the pills and the pride and the complete disconnection from reality came together into 5 words he'd regret for the rest of his life. "I don't care about your damn buzzards." The courtroom went silent. Even Johnny's own lawyer looked horrified. "What did you say?" the judge asked. "Those birds," Johnny said, his voice flat and cold. "I don't care about them. It was an accident. Things happen." The judge's face hardened. "Mr. Cash, those birds were critically endangered California condors. Because of your negligence, 49 of them are dead. That's nearly half the remaining population on Earth." Johnny shrugged. "I didn't mean to." "But you don't care that you did." "No," Johnny said, "I don't." The newspapers ran with it. "Johnny Cash, I don't care about dead birds." His callousness became national news. Environmental groups were outraged. Fans were disgusted. Johnny Cash, who'd built his career on being a voice for the downtrodden, had just shown the world how little he cared about anything. The court ordered Johnny to pay $82,001 in damages, the largest fine ever levied against a private individual for starting a forest fire. Johnny paid it and forgot about it, went back to his pills, back to his self-destruction, back to not caring. But something was changing. Slowly. Quietly. June Carter refused to let it go. "Do you even remember what you said in that courtroom?" she asked Johnny weeks later. "No," Johnny admitted. "I was pretty high." "You said you didn't care about killing 49 endangered birds. You said it on record, in front of a judge." Johnny was quiet. "Is that who you are now?" June asked. "Someone who destroys things and doesn't care?" "I didn't mean it," Johnny said softly. "Then why did you say it?" He didn't have an answer. That fire, that moment in the courtroom became a turning point. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly it started to eat at Johnny. The realization of what he'd done, what he'd destroyed, what he'd said. 49 condors, dead because of him, and he'd told a judge he didn't care. What kind of person says that? What kind of monster? 2 years later, in 1967, when Johnny crawled into Nickajack Cave ready to die, the condors were part of it. The shame of that day, the callousness, the proof that the pills had turned him into someone unrecognizable. And when Johnny finally got clean in 1968, one of the first things he did was reach out to environmental organizations. He wanted to help, wanted to make amends, wanted to prove that the man who said, "I don't care about your damn buzzards," was gone. Johnny Cash became an environmentalist, quietly, without publicity. He donated money to wildlife conservation, supported legislation to protect endangered species, worked with groups trying to save the California condor from extinction. He never talked about it publicly, never used it for good press, because it wasn't about redemption. It was about responsibility, about facing what he'd done and trying, in some small way, to make it right. In 1988, 23 years after the fire, a reporter asked Johnny about Los Padres, about the condors, about what he'd said in court. Johnny was quiet for a long time. "I was a different person then," he finally said. "High, arrogant, disconnected from reality. When that judge asked if I cared about those birds, the truth is I didn't care about anything. Not the birds, not the forest, not myself, not even the people who loved me." He paused. "But I care now. I cared the moment I got clean and realized what I'd done. Those condors, they're never coming back. That forest took decades to recover. And my words, my callousness, that's on record forever." "Do you regret it?" the reporter asked. "Every day," Johnny said. "But regret without action is just self-pity. So I've tried to do something, to help, to be part of the solution instead of the problem." By the time Johnny Cash died in 2003, the California condor population had slowly recovered. Not because of Johnny. He was just one small part of massive conservation efforts, but he'd helped, donated, advocated, tried to balance the scales. The forest in Los Padres recovered too. Nature has a way of healing, given time and care. And Johnny? He spent the last 38 years of his life proving that the man who said, "I don't care about your damn buzzards," wasn't who he really was. That's the lesson. The one that took Johnny decades to learn. When you're lost in addiction, in pride, in self-destruction, you stop caring about anything. You become capable of terrible things, saying terrible things, doing terrible damage. But that doesn't have to be the end of your story. You can wake up, get clean, face what you've done, and spend the rest of your life trying to be better, to care, to make amends. Johnny Cash started a fire that burned 500 acres and killed 49 endangered birds. He stood in front of a judge and said he didn't care. But that callous, high-broken version of Johnny Cash wasn't the real man. It was the monster the pills had created. And when Johnny finally killed that monster, when he got clean and clear and human again, he spent the rest of his life proving it. Not with grand gestures, not with publicity stunts, but with quiet, consistent actions that said, "I care, I'm sorry, I'll do better." That's redemption, not erasing what you did, but facing it, owning it, and spending your life trying to balance the scales. Johnny Cash died knowing he could never bring back those 49 condors, never undo the damage of that fire, never take back those 5 terrible words. But he also died knowing he'd tried. He'd cared. He'd done the work. And sometimes that's all any of us can do.